For coming in. Let's talk about Labour, because voting is officially underway in the Labour leadership contest. More than 500,000 Labour members, affiliated supporters and registered supporters are voting over the next 6 weeks. There are 3 candidates in the race: Sir Keir Starmer, Rebecca Long-Bailey and Lisa Nandy. Margaret, you're backing Keir Starmer for leadership, are you?
Well, I sort of feel ambivalent about the top 2. I'm actually going to put Lisa Nandy as my first choice, and then I'm going to put Keir Starmer as my second choice.
Why?
And in part because I think she, during the campaign, has really opened up the debate on the really tough issues that Labour faces in a much more open way than I think Keir Starmer, who's been in the lead, has avoided debate on most issues. And maybe he believes what she says, but I haven't seen it. And I think she's had really interesting things to say about how we start winning back the seats we've lost, how we deal with it. Tough issues like populism. She's been much more, I think, inventive, and she's a woman, and it is about time we try to get a woman leader of the Labour Party. If the Conservatives have managed in the past, we should jolly well get it. We've got loads of talented women on the Labour bench.
Do you agree with that point?
Well, of course, it would be wonderful to see a woman leader of the Labour Party, but I have to say that voters in this country are neither prejudiced against women or particularly in favour of them. So it will be party first. But I wouldn't want to cast judgment about who would be the better leader. But, of course, a women leader of the Labour Party would be wonderful.
Has Keir Starmer been too guarded for you, then, in terms of setting out his vision?
I think he will be very good and he will probably win, and I look forward to working with him when he does. I mean, all the signs are that he will. I just think that he has been a bit guarded, and I think back, I remember back to the 80s, when Neil Kinnock came in, also from the left. But I think some of these sort of commitments that Keir Starmer has made are ones that I'm not sure we will see delivered in 24. We shouldn't see it delivered in 24. Let me take it back a bit, Joe. We've got Corbynism, which it looks as if actually that has sort of disintegrated and imploded in a much quicker than I ever thought it would. If you
Rebecca
had me on the
Long-Bailey is still carrying the torch very much for the Jeremy Corbyn.
The most recent poll suggests she's likely to come third in this, which is quite a difference. If you'd asked me a year ago what would happen in this leadership fight, I would have thought it would be a much stronger fight between the Corbynist ideology and those of us that want a sensible left-of-centre party built on the social democratic traditions that we have. So we've got that, but we've also got other challenges. We've lost the vote of older people. We have got challenges around losing the working class vote. The trade unions, who used to deliver a strong cohort of vote, now no longer deliver as many votes. There aren't as many trade unionists and the leaders don't do it. And then we've got the movement from the economy stupid to these sort of cultural and identity issues, which make it much difficult for Labour to respond to the agenda that is there.
I think all that's true, but there is also a hidden headache for the Conservatives in there, in that you've said that Labour's lost the older vote. But look how Labour did amongst the younger people, and it's the same with ethnic minorities. Conservative Party doing abysmally amongst ethnic minorities. Amongst younger women, the Conservative Party lost a huge number of votes. So I think there's a problem in bringing together a broad coalition for both parties. It's an immediate problem for the Labour Party. But actually, the Conservative Party, 5-10 years down the line, if it wants to stay in power, needs to reach out to some of these other groups.
I agree with her, but do remember that actually there are more older people, and older people are more likely to vote, and our lead among older people was always incredibly important.
But there's a demographic problem for you.
Well, not necessarily in terms of there was a demographic problem in 2010, and now I've ended up with from a 2,000 majority to 11,500 majority. These demographics always seem to be, back in 2010 there was a demographic problem, but it changes, and people decide to become conservative when they realise about sort of paying tax and wanting to look at how they can sort of invest in their local communities and stuff. So I think it's a dynamic issue. I mean, I just think no one cares about this leadership election, let's be honest. I mean, it's like they're going to be electing the equivalent of Michael Howard or IDS. I mean, they're not going to get back into power in 5 years' time.
I think it'd be really interesting.
Basically, Keir Starmer Starmer will probably win, but he ultimately backed Jeremy Corbyn. He served in a shadow cabinet. You know, he didn't have the guts, unlike Margaret, to step aside. You know, he is a Corbynist and he's trying to win their vote. He's trying to have his cake and eat it.
Right. Well, let's talk about the deputy leadership, because you've had a rather public spat with one of the candidates for deputy leadership, and that's Dawn Butler. And this is over a proposal in her campaign manifesto. Let's have a look at what she's actually saying. She says, if any MPs publicly undermine the leader of the Labour Party, they will be suspended by the whip and will have to reapply democratically. If MPs go off message, she says, they will have to deal with me and the whips. And let's see what you tweeted in response, Margaret. Great idea, Dawn, you said. If only this rule had been implemented during the last Labour government, we'd have suspended Jeremy Corbyn more times than I can count. Extraordinary vision for our open, tolerant and broad church movement. Unity reigns.
Well, I did think it was the most nonsensical idea that I've seen, because not only Jeremy Corbyn would have been suspended, you know, I mean, you go right back to he tried to unseat Neil Kinnock, he'd have probably been suspended then. But I would probably have been suspended every week, Joe. And I don't know whether they'd have let me back in. I think I'd have been on a constant suspension. But the serious point, if you take away a bit of my irony, which, of course, Jews have no sense of irony, but I have got a little bit of it, that if you take a serious look at this, you know, it's really important. We're a broad church. We've got to have open debate. That's how you come to the best solutions. And do you really want to suppress bullying, sexual harassment, anti-Semitism, all these really important issues that actually we have to speak out loudly about if we're to change them?
So you reserve the right to be a thorn in the side of the future Labour leader?
I always reserve the right to speak openly. I always do, as you know. I
right.
always speak openly about things that I think that
Margaret
matter.
says these things are important, but actually the standoff between Jeremy Corbyn and the Parliamentary Party was hugely damaging to the Labour Party. And is that not what Dawn Butler is talking about?
It was hugely damaging, but party, you can't just have this kind of robotic type of MP who just compliantly trots through the voting lobbies as directed. That just is, it just doesn't help democracy, does it? I think actually Chris's point is right, that the Labour Party, this leadership contest has been so dull, and you know they're really struggling to get cut through. These candidates are not setting the world on fire. I think Lisa Nandy is actually the one who's really broken through the most in terms of, you know, being relatively unknown, and she's actually built up quite a decent profile. She seems to actually be getting out there. But really, you know, if for 5 years are people going to be paying attention to Labour? Are any of these candidates really going to wrestle back the agenda from Boris Johnson? I think it's hard to see that.
Let me just say, as a response to that, there were a lot of people on the Labour benches who chose not to serve under Jeremy Corbyn. There's a huge amount of talent, and what I'm hoping is, if it's Keir Starmer or Lisa Nandy, whichever the two comes through, that they will appoint these very talented people who haven't had the chance to try and...
Should they have Jeremy Corbyn in their shadow cabinet?
Absolutely no.
No. Keir Starmer couldn't say one.
I mean, I think it's Richard Bergen who suggested Jeremy Corbyn should be our shadow foreign secretary, and I thought I mean, that is a joke beyond jokes, really. In terms of on the doorstep for me in the last election, one of the key things that came out was that Corbyn was simply not trusted with the defence of the nation. Right. And I remember a guy coming out saying, "I'm a squaddy, Margaret. I'm a squaddy. I can't vote for Corbyn."
I was told that Rachel Rees and Yvette Cooper are both willing to serve in a frontbench role under Keir Starmer, which would be a great thing to see people of their stature coming back. But the problem is, where can he put them? He still has to appease this Corbynist.
Let me tell you, Rachel Rees could be our shadow chancellor, and Yvette Cooper could be our shadow home secretary.
There is a membership to think about too.
Very politically incendiary in terms of the Corbynistas in the party.
All right, we're going to move on and talk about something different.